right, welcome to a very special edition of the We Can't Believe They Gave Us a Show with Jim.
Nick.
And I'm David.
And today we're going to, I already messed up. Oh, we're going to ignite the shift within on this special edition. So here we go.
Before we get to that, I think we have a sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Firehouse Subs, the firefighter-founded hot sub chain with a passion for hearty and flavorful food, heartfelt service, and public safety. Ready for your next mission? Firehouse Subs is offering firefighters the opportunity to continue serving after service now as restaurant owners. Learn more at www.firehousesubsfranchising.com.
You know, Mark's the one that put us all together, and we really should have actually had some Firehouse Subs for this lunch edition of our show. But I digress. So we just met David last week over the phone and live in person just maybe 15 minutes before we started here. But you had a lot of stuff going on throughout your career and throughout your life.
Well, thanks. It's great to connect with you guys. We kind of have parallel podcasts on Firefighter
We're all really
Nation.
good looking.
That's right.
Yeah, we have that in common.
Yes.
And we like licorice. I just wanted to ask you about a story you mentioned. We were in the green room, and Jim was sharing some incredible licorice.
So it's licorice, Swedish fish. It's kind of one of those things, but this short and sweet of it, and it wasn't really sweet, was I was in Sweden, and of all snacks that I was offered a bowl of Swedish fish. And they were all different varieties and different colors. Like, I wasn't used to the ones, like, that's not the American Swedish fish that we're used to. And I got one thinking it was chocolate and realized it was black licorice. And I remember saying right then, like, there's a reason that this flavor is not in the U.S. Like, it never got past customs. They should extra tariff the crap out of that.
There's some very different kinds of licorices out there on the other side of the Atlantic, for sure. But yeah, I'm happy to kind of be. Oh yeah, it's licorice time. Time for a snack.
We got but I'm not sponsored by them or anything. Give David some.
It's good stuff.
But before you even started the fire business, I was intrigued because you already had a career, and it's not like the typical career of a firefighter where you're a landscaper or plumber or electrician. You were doing something a little bit cooler, to say?
Well, it was very different than the fire service. I came into this life in a family that was immersed in music, and music teachers, people that were inventing and writing music books, and so my first career was in the music business. Started out working in New York as a recording engineer, making records, and then morphed into writing music for TV sports on CBS, basketball, football, golf. And it wasn't until I wanted to move my family out of New York City into the suburbs that we bought a house next to the firehouse. And my first thought was, this may be a bad idea. It's probably going to be really loud, a lot of sirens, a lot of distractions. Turned out to be the greatest thing that ever happened because I met some of the guys next door. They invited me to a barbecue. One thing led to another, and here I am in the fire service, kind of doing dual careers now for a while, doing my music and also volunteering for a short period of time. And once I decided I wanted to elevate that, I got hired at a career department and continued to do both careers side by side.
That's great. I know plenty of firefighters that are musicians as well, but you're the first one I know that's been Grammy nominated, so that's pretty neat.
I was blessed to work with some great people, and I kind of have flashbacks coming to a conference like this because there's an annual conference in New York called the Audio Engineering Society. Similar kind of thing, huge in scope. Some of the major players in the industry come to it, and you're kind of rubbing elbows with famous recording engineers, famous artists, musicians, and it's really inspiring because you get to see them up close and you get to see the newest, latest equipment, what's state of the art. So this really has a lot of, kind of common ground with that, and I really enjoy coming to these.
Absolutely. I saw one of those robot dogs here earlier, like that are going to take over the world. Like, they're here.
Right.
Yes. But
the T-1000.
So I'll switch the subject here. Let's talk about firefighter cancer. Mm-hmm. About 15 years ago, it's kind of crazy to think. I was in a booth for the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, and our booth, it was a free space back then, but it was upstairs from here, up the escalator, right around the corner from us. And the only way people found us at that point in time is if they were lost or trying to go find a secret place to make out or something. That's the only way that they found us. And now we're at a place where you can't throw a baseball and not hit something related to occupational firefighter cancer. So come a long way within those 15 years or so. But you're a survivor, as am I. Luckily, you're not. That's good.
So far, so
Stay
good.
part of that team.
Right.
What flavor of cancer did you end up getting diagnosed with?
Yeah, and then I think the key thing is that there's so many different kinds that the diagnosis, the treatment, the prognosis are all very different. The whole experience is different, so you can't equate one kind with another. I was diagnosed with stage 4 head and neck cancer. So it started in my mouth, progressed to my lymph nodes. I was walking around, I had no idea. I felt perfectly fine. It wasn't until I went to get a haircut one day when Fast Freddy's like snipping around my ears and he says, "What's that on your neck?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" There was a walnut-sized lump that I had to go to several doctors actually, and heard the words. Now, I only heard "you have cancer." My wife heard "you have stage 4 cancer." I was that kind of like in denial.
Oh yeah. You almost zone out when you get
that word
that
has
kind of
so
news.
much impact, right? Anybody who hears the word cancer is going to, I think, immediately think the worst.
Yeah. I had. There were points when, after my diagnosis, I literally couldn't say it. Like telling my loved ones, telling my family, my friends. Like I had to have my wife say it, because just saying those words, it's impactful. It's impactful in a bad way. Like nobody ever says, "I've got cancer," and they do a cartwheel and flip and stuff. It's when you say that, it's traumatic. It inflicts trauma on somebody, because there's nothing ever good about a cancer diagnosis.
Exactly. And you pair that with the job that we do. Cancer diagnosis typically means, or in my case, it meant you're done for now. You got to go fast-track treatment. For me, it was chemo, radiation, ultimately surgery. I had to stop doing the job. I chose to go into the kitchen with my shift and say, "Guys, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be with you for a while." And that was one of the hardest things I had to do in that process. They were so supportive. One guy, Big Mike, put his hand around my shoulder. He said, "Dude, one step at a time, one bite-sized chunk at a time." And that, I can't tell you how much pressure that took off of me, that, I wanted to just come back tomorrow and be back on the job, and that wasn't going to happen.
How long were you off of work for?
I had, I think I went into treatment around Thanksgiving that year, in 2013, and then I came back probably April of 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you able to do a workers, firefighter presumptive?
So even though it was in effect, I didn't benefit from it. Some of those are difficult to navigate, and to be honest, I found information way after the fact that would have been helpful. I discovered a firefighter, retired fire captain, who has a web page with PDF packets that are pre-set with kind of workers' comp information that you would need. That's got scientific research. It's got templates for doctors' letters that substantiate a particular kind of cancer. And he has them for all different varieties of cancer. So I wasn't aware of it at the time. So my workers' comp was a little more of a struggle to get some compensation for it.
I see. Each state being different, it just complicates things, right?
Right.
So I know in Ohio it was difficult too. I mean, it took me a year and a half to close out my case.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to the fact that it's traumatic, and it's not just traumatic for us, but it's traumatic for our family, maybe even for our coworkers. When someone you love at the firehouse is got now a life or death battle with cancer, we all kind of get involved in that in some way, shape, or form. We're all emotionally invested in that, the outcome and the well-being of that person. And sadly, we've lost 2 guys from my department, one to pancreatic, one to brain cancer, who were beloved. I mean, these were the guys you would, you want to see when you show up for work. It's a tragedy. It's a traumatic thing for everybody, the families, and we really, still are figuring out how to best support that process.
Well, it's a hard thing to, like, you feel, even as a coworker, you almost feel hopeless for your friend, right? And you don't know what to do, what's comfortable for them. Like, my organization, Brothers Helping Brothers, was started because a friend of mine, actually, he got H1N1 flu and passed away, and ultimately passed away from it. But it was one of those things, like, you would talk to him when he was in hospital, like, hey, we're going to start raising money for you just to help you with your bills. And he's like, don't do that. Don't, like, you almost have to force them kicking and screaming to try to help them, right? So it's almost like it's a weird, it's a weird dichotomy with trying to not overstep your bounds with your friends, but trying to be supportive and helpful at the same time with those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, but we've come such a long way, and I loved, like, being here at FDIC this week. The FCSN has it set up to where everybody can go get free skin exams at Lucas Oil. So if you're coming to the show the next few days, look that up too. Get yourself a free skin exam. I'd rather know if something's going on, because it's so much easier to deal with a cancer when it's in a very early stage. That a lot of times that's just, you do surgery and you're done. The longer you wait to find your cancer, all that other stuff, now is in play, and that's when you can really jeopardize losing kind of your same lifestyle, the way you do things right now. So,
well, speaking of which, your cancer was found pretty early on. It sounds like you and David actually have a little bit of a parallel story, because your wife found yours in your neck as well, right?
Yes, yeah. So we were just eating dinner, and she was sitting across from me, and she said, the right side of your neck looks bigger than your left, in which I responded with, you're crazy. And went and checked myself out in the mirror, and after, taking it all in, I didn't see what she was seeing. But I'm so thankful that I still, even though I didn't see anything, I still went out and got checked. And sure enough, she was right. And I really actually think I would have blown her off if it wasn't for a friend of mine that had a very similar story to yours and mine, where he had a spot on his back and he couldn't really see it, but his wife said, something's going on there, you need to get checked out. And he blew her off, and he waited and waited, and he finally was like, fine. She kept nagging him.
Yep.
And he said, make the appointment, I'll go in just so you can leave me alone. And he went in, and sure enough, stage 4 melanoma. 35 years old, he has 5 kids, and he's just told he has terminal cancer. And so it always, when he goes out and talks, and it always just kind of stuck with me, was if he would have, I don't want to say if he would have listened to her at the beginning, but I'm kidding. But if he would have went and got checked out earlier on, maybe he wouldn't be stage 4. Maybe it'd be 1, 2, or 3. I don't know, but different outcome. So that is what was playing in my head to get checked out. So I encourage any of you out there, if somebody says something, or if you're feeling weird, something's going on for a couple of weeks, get checked out.
Well,
don't wait.
I think that's the important part of, investing with your family as well, right? Like, your wife, your kids, your loved ones see you probably most every day. They're going to notice those unusual things and be upfront with that, right? Like, let them know, hey, like, if there's something weird, let me know, because, like, if somebody didn't let you guys know, you may not be here today.
Exactly.
Right? So, tell if you see one of your friends or loved ones, in a certain way that looks different, that could be potentially hazardous to, cancerous, let them know, right? Don't hold it to yourself.
Right. And I think the other point that comes up here is that as firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, police officers, we're so much better at taking care of everyone else than ourselves, and we kind of just push off, getting whatever it is, the checkup, the scan, the colonoscopy, and it's true for mental health too. I think that we're making sure everybody else is okay, but we just kind of set ourselves, back on the priority list, that we're not taking care of the things that will help us be better providers.
Well, and unfortunately, I think that's a trait of a first responder, right?
Yes.
Like taking care of others is more important than taking care of yourself, and that's where it's important to fill your own cup
Yes.
up sometimes, right? Because like if your cup's empty, you have nothing else to give to somebody else, then how can you give something that you don't have?
Right.
So you got to take care of yourself to take care of others.
I kind of look at it like there's two different dynamics. There's, you could call it a bucket that fills up with all the trauma that we incur during, could be from childhood, could be military experience, could be during doing calls, and all the other things that happen inside the firehouse that are negative. Maybe it's backstabbing, maybe it's, lack of support from above. Mm-hmm. They start to fill up this bucket with a kind of sludge that we need to think about dumping periodically. And at the same time, like you're alluding to, we need to have like an emotional bank account that we're continually filling up, so that when the time comes that we're not on empty. We do so much better job charging our cell phones when it's getting low than we do charging ourselves up when we're getting low.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you're alluding to mental health on here. I want to touch base with you. How was mental health? Did it even exist when you started? And then how was it when you ended up right before you retired?
Yeah. I was unaware of anything except EAP in my department, to the extent that when I became promoted as an officer, I still had no knowledge about what was out there for anybody that, under my supervision, who might be struggling. And it wasn't until almost the end of my career when the Fairfield County Trauma Response Team came to do a presentation. They're a county-based group of clinicians that do CISD, they do therapy, they do presentations. They came, talked about EMDR, they came and talked about mental health, and they brought a couple of responders with them, so it wasn't just clinicians. I'm like, I never knew this was a thing. And from there, that actually led to the creation of Responder Resilience podcast with two of those clinicians, where we talk a lot about mental health.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I know when I started, it was if you dared showed emotions, you were told to suck it up, buttercup, or are you sure you're cut out for this job? I got that. And it wasn't until we had two members kill themselves that we started to actually see some change and be able to actually talk about this. It was unfortunate that we had to have that happen for the change, but I'm at least glad that it's here. And we are able to talk about it. And one of the cool things that we did, and I just had an article come out on Firefighter Nation, I believe I'm allowed to plug that here, that's fair game, was about having actual clinicians come to the station and do checkups while the guys and gals are on duty.
Yeah.
And that was a big game changer for us. Just having the ability to, because when you're on shift, whatever you wanted to do, I'll do. You got me for 24 hours. After, when I'm off, like, good luck, right?
Yeah.
That's how so many of my members were. So being able to do something where it was convenient for them, and they actually got to go out of service and take a break, was huge.
Yeah. I think the interesting part, so Jim and I met because I saw a need for a health and wellness type conference. That was what my idea was. Cancer was a hot topic. This was 8 years ago, so cancer was a really hot topic, but nobody was talking about mental health.
Right.
So, I met with Jim. We ended up decided to work together to accomplish this goal of starting some type of symposium where we're talking about this type of stuff. And it's so interesting because, when we first started, it was, we'll bring them in with the cancer and we'll shove mental health down their throat. Something that they want to hear and something they need to hear, right? And we, when we scheduled the things were back and forth. So, you'd have a cancer topic, then you have a mental health topic. So you couldn't avoid it, right? And, this will be our 8th year of doing the Firefighter Health and Wellness Conference. We've it's almost gotten to the opposite, where people are wanting to talk more and more about mental health and less about cancer and other supportive, health and wellness topics. So it's just intriguing to see, like, from the bare beginnings where you started, right?
Yeah.
To where it is now. It's like, it's refreshing to see that, we are making progress in some form or fashion, right?
Yeah.
And, it's a topic that people are more willing to talk about than they were 8 years ago.
Yeah, it's changed dramatically, and I salute you guys for having a conference that talks about both of those important topics, because they need to be done. Sometimes people can't travel across the country, and you're doing it in a place where maybe your brothers and sisters in Ohio can easily access it. So I appreciate that, and I think there's a common ground between mental health and cancer. Now, this is a little bit of theory on my end, but in addition to the toxic exposures that we are experiencing as firefighters, we're also dealing with sleep deprivation, which is a problem for our immune systems, and the emotional mental health piece of it, right? Where some of us are under intense stress, post-traumatic injury, repressed emotions where we're not able to express it or talk about it. And all that stuff, I think, is in combination is making us very susceptible to cancer, much more than if we weren't doing this job.
Well, you have to almost do a whole body approach. Like, that's one of the things that we strive for in the conference. We try to talk about as much as we can, talking about nutrition, because we all know, like, 2 o'clock in the morning, you're eating a crappy ham sandwich at a EMS room or something like that, or, you're
Uncrustables.
Yeah, Uncrustables. You're not eating as a healthy individual would eat, right?
Yeah.
Or sleep, like you said, sleep deprivation. I mean, there's a whole, wide range of things that I think, definitely go into not just mental health, but cancer, everything, and if we could slowly improve some of those things, we slowly improve everything overall, right?
Yeah. I think we just keep, evolving that conversation. There's a lot of great books being written. There's people speaking on these topics that are doing phenomenal work, and some of us are blessed to be able to kind of share them as guests on podcasts where, we can, maybe somebody's not a book reader, somebody's not a conference goer, but they'll listen to a podcast on the way to work, and now you've captured them. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see a relation between occupational cancer and behavioral health as far as, there's different stages for cancer, but I also feel like there's different stages for behavioral health. With the same idea, if you get help early on, it's so much easier to take care of that and be able to move forward and still have that similar quality of life. But the longer you wait with that behavioral health stuff, now it's like it's beyond just one-on-one clinician. Now you're doing an IOP, or you're doing, maybe you're going away to the Center of Excellence or Rosecrans or, whatever it may be. But if you can take care of that early on, it just makes it so much easier moving forward.
Right, and we don't want to get to the point where we're snapping, right? Something, we're in jobs where we're making critical decisions, life or death decisions. There's a lot that hangs in the balance. You want to be kind of optimized for, best brain health, best mental health, best physical health, and we don't want to be at that snapping point, at a point where it's going to be harmful to us or our brothers and sisters or the public. So it's really, what you're saying is 100% right on.
Well, I think that's important to realize, for our employers too, right? Because like, if you have an employee that is on the deeper end of a mental health spectrum, right? Like, that's not going to be good for the department as a whole, So investing in our people, I think, is one of the biggest things that we could do as citizens, demanding, requesting our city leaders and such like that to invest in our firefighters, allowing them to recover and do those things, at very little to no cost is also important too.
Right.
Because, I mean, the cost is definitely a barrier for a lot of people.
Right.
Like if it's going to cost me $75 every week to go get therapy, and my budget's already tight, am I going to spend that $75 every 2 weeks or every week to go to therapy? Probably not. But if the department helps you pay for those types of things and or at least provides that an alternative solution to it, a long-term solution, it's definitely important.
Yeah, and also that there are no-cost resources out there. I live in the state of Florida. The state of Florida has provided a lot of solutions from trainings, some seminar type things. They have an app that has mental health in it. There's directories where you can find vetted clinicians, and I'm involved with an organization called 220, which does healing trauma for veterans and first responders at no cost to them or their families. So it's not like there's just one size fits all. There's a lot of options out there that at least can get somebody started towards getting the help or support that they need.
Well, it's Florida's kind of interesting because I feel like they're on the cutting edge more so than some other states. So I mean, it's always good to hear that those types of resources. But if you're in a state that isn't, knowing where to go or where to start with is good too. Like they could reach out and say, hey, can you help me figure out how we could bring this to our state?
Yes.
And things like that. Because all it takes is one person, to really start pulling the flag, and and that's where the groundswell starts, that grassroots effort. Because it's sometimes it's up to us to make the change, right?
Yeah. Now I want to touch on what you were kind of saying about an investment. When we buy our new fancy apparatus, and believe me, there's some fancy apparatus at this facility right now. I mean, but when we buy those, we know we're going to have preventive maintenance. We're going to have to upkeep that because we want that fancy ladder or an engine to last 20, 25 years, whatever it may be. That's how long we're supposed to be there too. So I would love nothing more than actually having departments invest in us, take care of us, do preventative maintenance on us, whether it's a firefighter physical, the skin exams, the clinician checkups from the neck ups. Like, invest in us because we're supposed to make it as long as our apparatus is, but so often we're not.
Well, I think that's one of the big things. Like, it's a mindset. It's a perspective. If you think of it that way, like a personnel is just as important as apparatus, just as important as equipment, then you're going to have it that way. But
I know we had the robot dog, but I haven't seen any apparatus themselves put out fires.
Right. Yeah. Well,
they need us.
Yeah. Well, there's not. I don't think there's going to be any AI or robot that's going to be able to take over for us either. At the end of the day. At least in this decade, right?
Yeah, maybe. It's all coming. I'm scared.
Right.
I think there's cultural change. It's like there's been a cultural change with cancer in the fire service. We're starting to see cultural change with mental health. Where I live now, there's an embedded clinician in the department, the fire service, and the chief states that he would probably have a vote of no confidence if we removed the program. So now we're in a place where firefighters want this program. They know that it's benefiting them. The town, the county, the state, whatever, starts to see the benefit in it, that you're keeping people on the line longer. You're not going to lose them to comp. You're not going to lose them to burnout, retirement, early retirement, medical retirement. There's so many benefits to it, and we're starting to see the balance tip a little bit.
That's great. I love that you have a culturally competent clinician embedded.
Yeah.
That is, I know that's what I was aiming for, and I never quite got there in my tenure, but I know places that have that, and it works tremendous because unfortunately, so many of our EAPs are low bid, they're not trauma trained, not certified, and I mean, I've just heard absolute horror stories. So that's why, at least for me, I had to go outside of that and find our own culturally competent clinicians that were trauma trained, could do EMDR, and we basically route people away from EAP and route them to that. Even though it is going to cost them money, they're going to have to come out of pocket. It's still a better service.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think it's, we had Mike Dugan at the conference a couple of years back, and he talked to us about his experience with EAP as a firefighter. And I mean, bravo to Mike for continuing on, because I think he went through 2 or 3 different
He
clinicians.
finally found what he calls, what his wife calls his boyfriend, his
Right.
clinician, but it was the third one.
Yeah, but oftentimes, it's one of those things where it's like you have a solitary chance to catch that person at that moment.
Yes.
And if you have somebody on the other end of that lifeline who is not the right fit, or at least doesn't know how to handle that situation, that could be the end for that particular person.
Yeah, 100%. I've heard this before. You have one shot typically to get it right with this. Like we have one shot in a lot of things we do to get it right, but with firefighters, you got to build that trust out of the gate, and not every clinician is going to be a good fit or the right person, or be able to build that trust. But I think embedded clinicians are a great way to build trust because they become familiar with the clinician. The clinician becomes familiar with the culture of the firehouse or the shift or the department. And so as we see more of that move forward, I think, and the younger generations, I think, are more willing to consider mental health as a necessary thing, as something that they're happy to talk about.
Yes.
It's not a secret anymore.
It's being talked about in drill schools now. It's in the IFSTAs and all those books. Like, it's normalizing, which is a good thing.
Well, that's the key to any change, right? Like, you look at 30, 40 years ago, and SCBAs weren't, used, right? They had them on the truck.
Yeah.
They might have them on their back, but they might not be wearing them. But it took many, many years of ingraining that into recruits at recruit school. Like, you will wear your air pack on a fire. You will wear your air pack on a fire. And then, same thing. Like, I've seen it with cleaning and care of the PPE itself. Like, if you promote it in the beginning when you're training them to come up into the fire service, then it's going to be second nature for them once they hit the streets. So you really have to, hammer this stuff kind of home. I mean, I know could be some argument saying like, well, we don't want to scare them off, by talking about cancer or mental health, but these are things that they're going to face at the end of the day, right? So why not be honest and upfront with them and say, hey, these are things that you may face while in this career, but we have the tools to help you manage it.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing.
You guys are seeing this. I'm seeing it. There are people who are well respected in our industry who are willing to tell their story and talk about their mental health journey. And I think that also opens doors and gives permission for others to say, hey, wait a minute, if that guy, who I love and respect, is talking about this and open about it and honest and vulnerable, maybe it's okay to talk about it.
Absolutely. That vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And, putting yourself out there makes it acceptable and okay for others to open up too. I mean, that's how I was able to get so many of my members to open up, by me sharing and airing my dirty laundry. But if that's what it took, that's what it took. Another tool that I've seen that helps out is therapy dogs. They're wonderful if used in the proper context. They can really relax somebody and get them to open up as well. And another thing I wanted to mention too, because you mentioned you got one shot so often to make sure you pair somebody with the right clinician or right resource. And really, I think what comes into play there is hopefully the department's peer support team. They're the ones, they're really the middle person. They should be there to help guide somebody to that adequate resource, and it should, hopefully, they know their stuff enough to where they get it right the first time. Because there's not always the second chance with this.
Right. And it's almost like training, right? We're going into scenarios, incidents where we need that muscle memory, be able to just go to something without having to pull out a notebook or a cheat sheet. Same with a peer support team. If you have a guy, brother or sister who's struggling and you need to get them help ASAP, it's not the good time to start going on the internet and searching for the resource. You really need to kind of vet them out, ahead of time and rehearse it, train on it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the important part with peer support, having the training, having a coordinator that knows what's up too. You know what I mean? Like, building out a program, it can't just necessarily be haphazardly slapped together.
So, with all that being said, we're on a 10-second clock. Kick down. Cut that, Mark. Crap. We're out of time. See ya.